I want to just do one other thing because sitting and listening to the conversation that we had right now was both illustrative of the work we have to do, but also somewhat painful in the sense that as a school system, we're still in a place where we have not provided the services that we want to provide to all kids. That said, I want to just mention a couple of things because I know there are some people sitting over there and some people sitting up here that wonder, like, is the district paralyzed as the board contemplates where it is? And so I just want to share a few things that are going on right now, and this really gets to the point that you're making, Dr. Jones, about the urgency of now. But it also, I think, adds at least a little bit of relief to a community that wonders what's going on. And so let me just share a couple of things. One, we did launch a new strategic plan this year based on that kind of groundbreaking research that was breaking the link. And I think we came back with a plan that was really much more simple, much more thoughtful, and much more actionable, if you will. We talked about a guaranteed viable curriculum because we realized that their value of degrees across the system was not the same. The value of math class in one part of this community versus math class in another class did not enable the young people to go forward and do the same kind of things. So we've worked really hard to build a strategic plan that focuses on equity and culture. And it does that by focusing on great teaching, because it realizes that in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, we're proud of a historically good teaching force. There's some teachers that are still in this room that probably should be home looking on lesson plans, but they're here because they're not only advocates for kids, but because great teaching demands a degree of civic engagement that you model for your kids so they become better and more productive citizens. And so to the teachers that were on, I say thank you for hanging out. And I watched one of my favorite teachers have to take her daughter home a minute ago, but just the same. We also valued time, and that's going to come out in a couple of my follow-up comments, but we also engaged with the equal opportunity schools where we have looked at schools across the system, I believe 8 different high schools, and we've taken a look at kids who tested well at some point in their career, but were now floating through as almost ghosts in high school. And we have several hundred kids now taking advanced placement courses that weren't taking them before because we have great teachers and counselors who have reached up and said, you know what, you're coming with us. And that is picking up momentum across the system. That's not something that we're waiting to do. We're doing it today. Something that you may not know is that after the winter holiday, when we start the second semester, in every one of our high schools, we're going to offer African American studies. And we're going to offer that because we believe that kids have to see themselves in our curriculum. And this will not be a class that is easy to get through. This will be a class that celebrates the contributions of African Americans throughout history. And quite honestly, only a few kids are getting today. Next fall, our kids will come back and we'll have Latino studies, Latinx studies, for all of the kids who want to take it. Now, a kid asked me, a young person like you, not a kid, I'm sorry. Somebody reminded me a long time ago, kid's a baby goat. I shouldn't use that word. But I will, because they're the greatest of all time.
Greatest of all time,
okay.
Exactly. I want to be a
and said, are you going to require all kids to take these classes? And I said, not right now, but we are going to make them available and make sure that they're important classes. I want to point out that we've also looked at our curriculum in terms of what we're doing for kids relative to career readiness. And we've gone from a point where we had 200 or 300, maybe 500 kids that had industry-based certifications when they left to well over 2,000 kids who got industry-based certifications last year. And that's because when this board hired me, you said to me, go make that happen. We've also reduced the number of suspensions at pre-kindergarten and high school. We still are struggling at the middle school level, but we've reduced the number of suspensions really geometrically. And quite frankly, what that's about is putting time and investment into kids' social and emotional health so that they're in classrooms learning as opposed to sitting at home unsupervised. And I know that there are some who are still taking some shots at what happens to kids, but I will tell you, by and large, it's a very positive initial step. And we'll report back to the board here coming up shortly about what those numbers look like and who is being, and I'll tell you, we still have disproportionality. That's something that we're working on, but we're going to get there. You know, this board also joined me in asking the county commissioners to hire 60 new folks who worked in the social emotional health realm. And yes, we're not at the averages that we need to be, but I think it's important that we take note. We didn't just stop and wait. We have 30 new guidance counselors, 20 new social workers, and 10 new psychologists in this district. We've also established through the hard work of Brian Kingsley and others a baseline number of AP classes that next fall will be true across the district at all of our comprehensive high schools. That there will be at least 10, and then we'll continue to ramp up from there. That's a significant improvement for the kids at some of our schools who only have 5 or 6 or a handful. We're going to make sure that there are at least 10 AP classes there, and then we will increase the number of sections as enrollment improves because we're scaffolding kids up through programs like the Equal Opportunity Schools Initiative. I think it's important that I point out that we are not just measuring the number of kids who are sitting in those classes, but their actual performance on the AP exams, because it's putting kids in a class in name only doesn't help them. But when we have a exit score of a 3, 4, or 5, that means something, and so that's the metric that we're using, not the number of kids in classes. We've deepened a number of partnerships in this district, the Augustine Literacy Project, the Freedom School Initiatives, our partnership with community schools. We're going to have a major expansion in that. And sitting in the audience tonight, I see Ross Danis up there, our partnership, well, he just left. He missed his calling, but we have it strengthened our partnership with them in terms of our after and before school partnerships. As many of you know, they received a $1 million grant from the Gambrell Foundation, and they have used it to invest in our kids in art and music and after-school activities, which I think is just really smart. You know, some time ago we received word that Dr. Jimmy Kim, who is our literacy partner, had just won a grant of $20 million, most of which is being invested here in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area as we work on early literacy. And there what we're talking about is literacy-based instruction, really working hard on the phonemic awareness of our young people, but also doing it within content areas rather than trying to teach kids isolated skills, because we believe that if you teach this in the science and math areas, literacy through science and math, you're going to have not only greater gains, but more functioning young people. We have developed our partnership over time with the Opportunity Council. I think it's important that we do. It's through that partnership that we have begun to talk openly and honestly about racial bias within the school system. It's where we've begun to talk about issues of privilege. It's where we began to talk about housing instability and the impact it has on our kids. So we are not just sitting by and waiting. As a school system, we're doing a lot of great things. I think it's also important to point out that, yes, the equity office is small right now, but it is mighty. Dr. Barnes is doing yeoman's work as we look across the grade levels, across the district, to inspire stronger levels of instruction, to make sure that kids see themselves in our curriculum. You know, Brian Kingsley brings that. He was hired specifically because of his curriculum expertise and his ability to deliver a guaranteed viable curriculum for our kids. That was the first and longest conversation that we had prior to him being hired here, is, can you do this for us in Charlotte-Mecklenburg? And his answer was an affirmative yes, and I see early wins and early results in Brian's leadership in the system. Add to that people like Mike Chilcutt, who we brought, who brings a deep appreciation for the arts, because many kids are going to connect to our curriculum through the arts, whether it's the visual arts, the performing arts, the fine arts, because school is more than math and science and reading. And we have assembled a team, I think, to complement the already fine team of people like Sue Duran, who leads our athletic programs in ways that are spectacular. You know, I know she's not coaching the team, but we have a team playing in the state championship this weekend. And you know, it's interesting because you talk about equity. One of the issues that came up earlier this week was that Vance was getting ready to go. Mary, you know about this. Vance was getting ready to go to a state playoff game and having to take activity buses, those old white school buses. But some of our schools, when they go away, they travel in coach buses. When Sue Duran heard that, the first thing she says, my budget will take care of that. That's exactly right. I'll snap for that too. Because that's a person whose heart is right. She didn't have to be asked to do it. She did the right thing because it was the right thing to do.
Exactly.
I'll add to that just a couple more things. You know, we have over 3,000 teachers that have gone through training in cultural bias. And this board increased the budget allocation for that so that we'll have another 1,500 teachers go through this year. And so we're not just sitting and waiting, because those teachers are talking about culture, they're talking about bias, they're talking about privilege. So I say all those things to say that, you know, the community who watched the discussion about the creation of a equity panel, which may or may not be important, that's not my point. My point is to reassure the community that we are doing the right things as a school system to get better. Are we doing enough of them? Are we doing them fast enough? That's for others to decide. But I will tell you, we are not shying from the work. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to the board members, but recognize I have to come to work tomorrow.
Okay,
Please don't make me go through a lot of that again. I'll send you a report on Friday of all that stuff.
all right.